What's up? This is Coach Paul. God has qualified me. This is Move Mondays, and you have greatness in you. Now, before we get to talking about this greatness, I got to make sure I say this. Now, watch this. If you don't move that person, those people, those places, those things, those thoughts, or those ideas, they are definitely going to move you. And I promise you this. You don't want to go where they're going to move you to. All right. Let's get off into what we're going to be talking about today. Y'all see I'm got the sniffles. It's raining out here in California. It's a sinus day accompanied with the fact that I had a slight cold. So bear with me because the show got to go on. All right. Now, today's subject matter was inspired by a conversation I had with somebody that's near and dear to my heart. And this conversation, it confirmed something that I continue to say all the time. And what I mean by that is, okay, when we use the word recovery. Now, first, let me do this first. Now, I am a motivational speaker. I'm an influencer. I'm an encourager. I'm a relationship coach. All of those things, but primarily, right, my ministry, my mission, my life's work, and my business is recovery coaching. Now, when we mention the word, now let me say this, I am a person who's in long-term recovery, and it's not just recovery from the substances that I used for many years and many years ago, and I'll get more off into that later. But I want to make sure that I make this thing clear. I am a recovery coach first. And I want to talk about recovery today because when we hear the word recovery, I'm in recovery or recovery coaching or whatever, when we hear that word, the automatic is that it's attached to substance use, whether it was drugs, alcohol, or whatever the vices were. Right on, quite naturally, rightfully so. I spoke about this in one of my earlier episodes, maybe a year ago, saying that I found out, I understand that yes, recovery is attached to people who have suffered from substance use, alcoholism, or any other vices. Absolutely. But recovery also applies to every man, woman, and child on the face of this earth who has experienced, watch this, you got to pay attention, who has experienced some sort of hurt, some sort of pain, or some sort of trauma. Recovery can relate to everybody who has had one or more of those experiences. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to explain that. When you think about the word recovery, it's about recovering, right? Recovering something or somebody. Now, when we think about life, when we were born, most of us, when we were born, we were given love and care and feeding and bathing and cuddling and, all of these things that you give babies and little children when they're first born, when they come into this world for their first few years. You get a lot of that covering, right? Most of us. Now, unfortunately, some people who came into this world and didn't get that from the beginning. So they were never covered. However, there's still hope for them because there are people out here like myself and millions of others, who have done lots of work in recovering themselves and healing themselves, that we can give support and help to some of those people so that they can get covered as well. And I want to make sure that I say this is also about the people who have never been covered. And what I'm talking about is those children that were born and never got any of that out the gate. Again, like I said, there is hope for them. There's people out here that can help them get covered. And the other thing about them is that those are the ones who has the greatest challenges of being covered because they never knew or experienced what real covering is because they didn't get it at birth. But I want you to know again, there's hope, there's help. It's many more people than myself that's ready, willing, able, and available to help you get the covering that you deserve. Now, let's go back to recovery or recovering. So recovery or recovering means recovering. Now, what I mean by that, again, some of us, when we were born, we had all of this nurturing and caring and cuddling and love that, our parents and our loved ones and other relatives gave us, right? But what happened for all of us is that at a certain age in our lives, many of us, when we were young, 3, 5, 7, 10, whatever, many of us had experienced some sort of hurt, some sort of pain, some sort of trauma, whether it be a capital T trauma or small T trauma. What a small T trauma is something like, you come home from school and all y'all stuff sitting on the front lawn because y'all got evicted. A capital T trauma would be something like you were physically abused or one of your loved ones, your parents died or that kind of stuff. Or, that's what a capital T trauma is. And so all of us, watch this, have experienced hurt, pain, or trauma, capital T or small t, at some point in our lives. The problem with all of that is that many of us, because of the cultures that we were raised in, because of the households that we were raised in, not meaning, I want to make sure I say this, not that those households were intentional and deliberate, and malicious about the hurt and the pain that they inflicted upon us. Doesn't mean that they were, malicious, intentional about that. However, some of that happened to us. And because of some of the cultures and the households that we were raised in, that was the norm. And so we looked over it like it really wasn't what it was. And the problem is that many of us grow up still not having dealt with some of those traumas, some of that hurt and some of that pain that we went through when we were younger. We grow up with that and we carry that into our adulthood, and it hurts us more now in our adulthood than it hurted us when we were young. And I'm going to explain it and break that down. Now, recovery or recovery is about healing that trauma, healing that hurt, healing that pain so that you can walk in the fullness of your greatness, the fullness of the extraordinary potential that's inside of each and every one of us. Because I promise you this, people, you'll get glimpses of your greatness. You'll get little pieces of your greatness here and there. There will be no root. There will be no longevity as long as you continuing to carry that pain, that hurt, that unforgiveness, that trauma. That's one of the reasons why Erykah Badu says, let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go. Bag lady, you gonna hurt your back. Dragging all them bags like that. Listen, that is 100% true. So, in order for us to recover, we have to overcome that pain, that hurt. We have to learn how to forgive. And many of us, how that happens is, first and foremost, we got to get a relationship with God. And God will lead us to the helps that we need in order to heal those things so that we can walk in the fullness of the greatness and the callings. Watch this. The greatness that's within us and the callings that he has put upon our lives. Because how better, watch this, watch this, y'all. How better can you help someone heal than a person who went through some of the similar experiences and is walking in their healing? Who better can help you? Who better can help you do that than someone who has had some of the same experiences, but they have walked in their healing and recovery as well? And so again, let me give you a little bit more information about recovery. Because again, recovery is about so much more than the person who has had issues with substances, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or whatever the case may be. Watch this. Here is what I learned in 2015 when I started my journey. So the guy who was my counselor at the time, he says, we're gonna deal with why. And I had no clue what he was talking about. I was like, what's that? Because no one ever spoken to me. And he said, we're gonna deal with why you use. He said, because 10% of the issue is the alcohol and the substances or whatever those things was. The other 90% is why you do the 10%. You heal the 90%, you lose the desire for the 10%. So many of us out there who have not had any issues with substances, alcohol, drugs, or anything, there's a 90% of why you doing what you do in terms of the 10%. And what do I mean by that? All of y'all who have never had issues with drugs or alcohol, you are overachievers. The people who dress themselves up to make themselves look good or feel good about themselves. People who are runners from relationship to relationship to relationship. Those are the things that's keeping you from your greatness. And again, that's the small part. The reason why you do that is the thing that you have never dealt with, is the thing that's continuing to choke out your greatness. And what has to happen is that I have to deal with why I do that. And like I said, there's millions and millions and millions of people out there in this world right now that has never had an issue with drugs and alcohol, but they all have a why. They all have a why that they have not dealt with. I'm going through a situation right now in my personal life with one of my children that has never had issues with alcohol or drugs, but she has a why that's causing her to do a 10% that's killing her. And because she don't understand that, she's continuing to live in that and choke the greatness out of her. That's what that God has given her. Choke the extraordinary potential out of her that God has put inside of her. Another person who's near and dear to my heart is the reason why this thing was inspired, this particular episode was inspired or subject matter was inspired today because I know that this person has extraordinary potential and greatness. You can see glimpses of it in the way that he lived his life and some of the things that he's doing, but you can also see it being choked because he haven't dealt with why he does some of the watch this, less than great destructive things that he's continuing to do in his life. He has not recovered. And again, like I said, recovery is about healing that trauma, healing that pain, healing that hurt, overcoming, forgiving, and sometimes that forgiveness means I got to learn how to forgive me. Sometimes it's going to mean that as well. Here is what the psalmist said in my favorite book, which I choose to call the Bible. He says, taste and see that the Lord is good. And I equate that to we are getting a little taste of it because we haven't healed, because we haven't dealt with the pain, because we haven't recovered. We get a little taste of it. And that's okay for a minute because it also goes on to say that I will sup with you. He said, I knock, and if you let me in, I'm going to come and sup with you. Listen, gentlemen. Listen, ladies. Listen, Move Mondays world. I want to eat. I tasted it. I know what it tastes like. I know that it tastes good about being with the Lord and allowing him to heal me so that I can walk in the greatness that he put inside of me. I know it tastes good, but now I want to eat. I want to continue to eat. So in order for me to eat, I got to do what I need to do to make sure that when I eat, I get in a place that I can eat, right? I get in a place that I can eat and I eat because let me explain something, y'all. You are not getting the fullness of your relationship with God if you walking in unforgiveness. I talked about that in one of the episodes. You are not walking in the fullness of your relationship with God. Forget your greatness. You missing God when you walk in unforgiveness. Forget your greatness. You missing God when you continue to hold on to that pain. Forget your greatness. You missing God when you continue to hold on to that hurt. Forget your greatness. You missing God when you continue to walk around with that trauma. That God, who is the healer, Jehovah Rapha, he is the healer. And you and I say that we have relationship with God while you still broken. Why are you still broken? Why are you not recovered? If you say you have a relationship with God, that God is your daddy, Jesus is your Lord and Savior, the Holy Spirit is your comforter and counselor. Why are you just tasting your greatness and not supping, not eating? So again, people, there's a lot of titles that's attached to who I am. But my ministry, my first ministry, is a recovery coach. And one of the things that I have discovered is that you do not have to have issues with substances, alcohol, drugs, or whatever your vices were, or are to need recovery. You don't have to, it's not limited to that. I know too many people who need recovery. And recovery is about healing. Recovery is about forgiveness. Recovery is about learning how to let go so that you can receive. Let go so that you can become. Let go so that you can walk in the fullness thereof. I'm where I'm at today, not because I recovered from drugs, not because I recovered from 30 years of heroin addiction. That's a small part of it. But where I am today because I have recovered from the hurt, recovered from the pain, I've recovered from the trauma, and I have recovered from the unforgiveness. I've got to land this plane because I want y'all to think about what has been spoken today. With that being said, I love every last one of y'all. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Until the next time we meet, please be well. Do the next right thing. God bless you. Recover. And if you looking for a butt, they ain't gonna never be hard to find. With that being said, Coach Paul is out of here. I'll see y'all next time. Deuces.